G'day team, Uncle Jojo, warm jigger to another rip roaring episode. Today we are going to be looking at changing the blades on a DeWALT thicknesser. DeWALT thicknesser, it's a portable thicknesser. I haven't done a review yet, it will be coming shortly. So stay tuned and be awesome. So we're going to be changing this, and before we even go about changing it, huge piece of safety advice: switch everything off. Really not that hard, only takes a second. Switch everything off, unplug it, make sure it's rigid. Next, there is a key in the top. Come over and check that out. Everything you kind of need for this is in the one spot. They're fantastic. The key's just there, and all it is, and you'll notice, it's a special end, so it's got the star end. And these just go into here, and we take these off. Quick, easy, painless. You don't need to pull them all the way out, as in pull the screws out. They've got a rubber seal on the bottom of them, so they won't pull out altogether, they stay in the position. Now the whole top will come off. You can see that we're starting to expose the whole area. Next bit of these, what we want to do is undo these. They've been done up a bit too tight. Then this section just pops up. And out. So what we've now done is we've exposed our blade in here. Again, it's the same bit that we're going to be using all the way through. This is why it's so important that we take the plug out. If somebody accidentally switched a plug or anything like that, last thing you want is this going off. So just undo the whole thing, really not that hard. I like to loosen my screws off, not just undo one screw at a time. It's the same as when I undo a tyre on my car. I don't just do the bolts next to each other, I do opposite bolts. So when I undo, and I don't do them all up or take them all off at once, because otherwise things will fall and move and blah, blah, blah. What I really want to do is just take a little bit extra time, unloosen all the screws, make sure that they can all move. Then I can start taking them out. Now that will just pop off. It's really easy, comes off right there, and there's a locking lug on these. Now, even knowing that these are blunts, they're still sharp, so please be careful when you're playing with the blades. You'll see here, that's the blade out, and you can see here that some of them have discoloured along here. We can still use those blades, we can still put them in, and there's discoloured on both sides. There are, sometimes you'll see, I don't know if this one's going to do it. Yeah, it's actually burnt on the edge here. It's burnt so bad that it's actually weakened some of the steel. So sometimes we can reuse these and get them resharpened, sometimes that we can't. So that one comes out all together. I'll keep them all together and I'll put my brand new one in straight away. You'll also notice on these that they've got what's called a dual blade. So I've got a blade on each side, yeah? So all I need to do is I can run it on one side, then once we're blunt, I just flip them over and reattach them that way. Of course you'll have to do all of this, but it's a really quick, easy way to do it. Another thing to note is that we've got this little lock lug just here, and inside, if you have a look, I've got a lock lug inside here too. 1, 2. There, that just slips straight on top of those. See that? So you got a little bit of movement, but not too much. It will line up with the actual nuts where you're going to put them, and it just sits perfectly. That means that every single one that we put back in will be spot on the right area. So again, I'll just put the screws in. I'm not going to tighten them too much up at the beginning. I'm not a fan either of you using an impact driver or a drill for this. I think it's really important that you find the thread and make sure that you use the thread to do these up properly, because what ends up happening is, and I've seen it happen on a number of occasions, where somebody uses an impact driver and they force the screw in. When I get to try and pull the screw out again a little bit later, what ends up happening is I can't get it out because someone's threaded the screw or the bolt, and it becomes a big nightmare. So just as I said before, take a little bit extra time doing it. Stuff by hand doesn't hurt. If you're doing it nice and slowly, you can make sure that you can get the right type of finish and take care of your tools. Another good thing to do while you're doing all of this is run through with an compressed air. Just get your compressor going and actually give this a blowout if there's any too much dust. This is actually kept fairly clean because I've got the exhaust fan on it all the time. So these ones I'm going to snip up, and I'll start at each end and then I'll work my way into the center. And then I'll just go over all of those again just to make sure they're nice and tight. I don't want to over tighten them, I don't want to keep them at all loose. I just want to snip them so they're tight and then they're snipped. That's good. So now I've got the other two blades to do. So let's just flip that. You got to be really careful on this because it's so sharp. So just to spin this, what we do is we use the bolts that we've got and we use a flathead screwdriver, and that just clicks it over. It's so easy. No need to force it. And then we'll repeat this whole system again 2 more times. It needs to be said, if you look at, I forgot to mention before, when you look at the cover of the blade, it's got a funny shape to it. You can see where these lugs are, which are the lugs that go on the top. So what we want to do is we want to line those lugs up, and this section at the back, so the bolts go at the front, this section at the back sits over here. I forgot to mention before that this here is a locking lug, so you can push this down and this will spin actually much easier. Completely forgot about that. So you don't have to use a screwdriver. And then you let that go and that'll actually lock back into place.
What are you loosening these ones up for?
Sorry?
What are you loosening these ones up for?
This was going to come out. There's 3 blades.
Oh, is there 3?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought there was only 2.
Yeah. It's not a planer. No. It's a giant planer, but it's not a planer.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Alright, so what we've got is the top goes back on. Everything goes back exactly how we did it. If you're not sure on how things go back as you pull it apart, because sometimes I myself do get lost on putting things back together again, I like to take photos as I go about it. I didn't get that opportunity when I was a kid and I pulled apart my bike. I had a newspaper round, the back wheel needed to be redone, the tyre and the tube, and I pulled it apart and I got so lost trying to put the bike back together again. So what I did was I actually started to write it down. So I can't suggest enough. Nowadays we've got cameras on our phones and everywhere. So take a film or take a few photos as you go pulling it apart. So then if you've got any questions about putting it back together, it's there, it's full record for you. That goes back there and that's ready to rock and roll. Before we start, we'll wind her up and put some wax on that base again. We'll get it ready to rock and roll and bish bash bosh, the job will be done. Any questions or queries about changing the blades on the DeWALT, please flick it over. I'll answer it for you best I can whenever I can. Otherwise, like always, stay unreal banana peels. I'll see you in the soup.